It's another week in the For Your Reference household, but it is a first for many of the cast, OT.
Mm-hmm.
We would have done Viola Davis a long time ago if you weren't such a Widows hater.
Wow.
Before we dive in, friends and lovers, I will say with my full Patrice Woodbine chest, where the nuance reside, we are going to get into some tasty, maybe not historically accurate action, OT.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Are you ready for the war cry? Eunuchs only, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get on with the show. Friends and lovers. Welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And Oti.
Clear your chanting throat, stretch your dancing muscles, and oil up for a grand battle of a phantom enemy. Whisper sweet nothings through the barrier of forbidden love with the Woman King this week. Woo-hoo. Hey.
What was that for? Bro, we've not even got into first impressions yet.
Man, I haven't felt this double white woman scandal since the college admissions. Am I right? Nudge, nudge.
Wow.
Let me get into... Ooh, I hope you've done your homework, friends and lovers, and I hope you're feeling nasty. Spoiler. Representation. We're going to get into detail. We're going to break the matrix, friends and lovers. We have director of first on the podcast, on the For Your Reference, if you're nasty, Gina Prince Bythewood, and most notably, Love and Basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a podcast interview that she did with Jamel Hill. I don't know if it was leading up to Woman King, but I do recall a clip of her talking about, taking Sanaa Lathan through the tough yards for Love and Basketball.
Yeah.
I felt a way about that.
Yeah, to the point where when Sanaa got it, she was like, okay.
Don't even want it anymore. Comparing, if that's a harder experience than her role in Succession, she went through the fire. Writers, Dana Stevens writing the screenplay, as well as Maria Bello. Don't worry, friends and lovers, we have a separate theme to talk about that. The Woman King was released in October of 2022. Shout outs to Sony for inviting us to the preview screening.
Mm-hmm.
A budget of $50 million, decent, and a worldwide gross so far of $83.3 million.
Ching.
Wow. Are you at the Holiday Inn?
Yep.
Are you for the culture?
Always.
A cast of Viola Davis, Tusu Mbedu, Lashana Lynch, as well as Sheila Atim. How could I? John Boyega.
Mm-hmm.
First for John Boyega, would you believe?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he comes to my man moon every month, but there you go. Let's get into first impressions. It was a fiery watch, and we've had a couple of days to simmer down. Unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to watch it a second time. I think I've had enough. But anyway, let's get into first impressions. Oti, our residential
black man.
You said it. Thank you, Burner Boy.
Well, I'm of two minds with this. If I'm going to go in watching this expecting Hollywood to tell an African story as if it was a bloody documentary, then it's
Beast.
No, then that's folly on me. Hollywood is never gonna do that. So with my expectations of what this would be it historically accurate or not, I knew what I was going to get. And coming out of the cinema, I I enjoyed it as a piece of entertainment.
Okay, so you're essentially saying if you didn't like it, shut the fuck up and get off your ass.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I think it's just one of those things where I know where the discussion points would be. And if you expect Hollywood to be different from what they've shown us this past decades, then you're going to be waiting a whole lot more. So I went in knowing exactly what this was going to be. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. Viola Davis is fucking brilliant and magnificent in this. Like, she carried this, man. She is something.
And just to bring some levity to this, we love Kamal Nanjiani. Like, this is a forward palate Kamal Nanjiani podcast. But when we did see him Eternals, we're like, for that?
Yeah,
he got buffed for that? So at least this made sense. All of the hours, all of the work that Viola Davis put into this role, she put her whole foot into this role.
1000% agree with you, man.
Okay, I want to bookmark what you just said, and we'll come to an actual discussion about Hollywood. But you said you were in two minds, OT Nas. What was the other mind?
If you're going to dive into tell African stories, yeah?
Hey, we've kind of been steeped in Africa from your fuck you and your silly husband, Young, Famous and African. We also did Beast as well. We've been settled into Africa this year.
Yeah, like if you're going to tell the story, you know, and pay homage to the people of the Dahomey kingdom, you know, then just, I don't know, it feels weird that everything is in South Africa. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, shoot it in South Africa.
You're talking about the filming locations.
Yeah,
okay.
It doesn't even need to be like there.
So you sort of it should have been close to Nigeria or West Africa.
Not even. Just have a piece of, you know, Easter egg that, actually this is where the thing happened, or something, anything really.
Tell us you've bought plots of land in Kenya for filming without telling.
I gotta tell first, do you?
Get in on the ground room floor, am I right?
100%.
Are you Mr. Chocolate from Atlanta?
Yeah. Nah, it's just one of those things, man. You know, you're putting them on a map. Might as well go in a bit harder, show the appreciation for the country and all that. I think I sort of picked up Kosa chants in the background. I'm like, bruh, even if you're in South Africa, doesn't make sense in this movie.
So just for our friends and lovers that are Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide, we're currently talking about the Dahomey tribe, which is currently within modern-day Benin, right next to Nigeria, which is West Africa. So you're saying there was a mishmash of possible chants and languages and maybe even accents that we'll come to.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. It's interesting because when you say you're of two minds, they are literally opposing each other.
They're not.
They're literally in a dance battle chant together.
I can isolate those two and look at it.
But what you're saying is shame on you, or it's on you if you think Hollywood can do better. But then you're also telling them to do better. So they are opposing.
I'm just picking up the sort of the lowest hanging fruit they can do, you know?
Yeah. But I guess that would also point out to the importance of you mentioning it, because unless people are African, they probably wouldn't even see. I didn't even notice.
It's one of those things I was like, bruh. Cool, you're filming in South Africa. You don't need the chants in there as well.
Okay.
Just saying.
So you're still conflicted.
I'm not. It's just it was an afterthought, and it will remain as an afterthought. It wasn't anything significant.
I will say, for Beast and even this, I feel like there could have been more focus on the expanse and the beauty of the land. Like, even if we think of coming back to the country that we're in, season 1 and season 2 of Redfern now, and it was like in what people would consider like the outback, like the Kimberleys in Western Australia, you could feel the beauty of the nature. And I feel like that could have been done a bit better in this film and also in Beast.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Something that you can argue with, and we're going to start off very light in our themes today because there's obviously going to be a lot of heavy nuance that we're going to get to. I want to talk about the accents. A friend, I might even say my childhood best friend, is Nigerian and they haven't seen the movie. However, their people are saying that John Boyega let them down. And I guess to contextualize, John Boyega is Nigerian and we have Tuso, who is South African. And then you have Viola Davis. And I think a lot of everyone else was kind of using the generic sort of vernacular that we're used to hearing for what people would expect to be like an African sort of accent. So, let's start off. This is like the palate cleanser, if you'll pardon the pun. How did you feel about the native tongue, the mother tongue?
I didn't think it was great. It wasn't as distracting as Black Panther was.
Black Panther was very distracting. T'Challa. Shout out to Forrest Whitaker.
But then, I have a couple of Western African friends and...
So you're one of those people that say you have one West African friend, right?
Yeah. But I don't know. It sounded a bit off. It just sounded generic sometimes.
But they also sounded different.
Yeah.
Like even I could tell.
But then again, you're casting Americans, Brits in here. I don't know what you expect. I didn't have a qualm with that.
You're really fighting yourself.
Oh, I'm not.
Because you say you acknowledge it, but then you're like, what do you expect?
I can point out something without feeling as if it weighed down the movie.
It's just beating you down, man.
No, I can just point out, oh, I noticed this. It's not that, oh, I noticed this and it's bad. And it weighs everything else down. It didn't for me. I saw it, but moved on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's not necessarily a theme, but I do want to put it here so we can really, ethically, non-Martin Freeman, whatever his name is in Black Panther, excavate, archaeologically dig this film where the nuance reside. And, this is looping back into your first impressions. We, friends and lovers, for your reference, nasty custodians of film, criticism, and otherwise. We are not the place where you come to debate whether races occur. We are not the place where you come and try and understand sexuality. Like, we speak from a place of nuance. We have said very generally that we didn't like Eternals, but unfortunately that means we're on the side of the sweaty film bros. But the nuance exists. Like, there are specific reasons why we might not like something, even though we are on the pendulum of those sweaty film bros, right? And that's non-gendered, right? So the reason why I want to say that is because it kind of leaked out at the start of the episode. I didn't necessarily care for this film. However, I would say that you should go and watch this film. And I would say that this film it should absolutely be experienced in the Nicole Kidman cinema. The reason why I say that is, even to be fair, Black Panther was our first episode of this podcast. And I even said that I didn't like Black Panther. And I stand...
Travesty.
I stand to that to this day. However, I do understand the cultural significance of that film. I don't think this film will have the same cultural shift. I don't know if it's just a matter of, the accessibility of Black Panther and maybe, but even this is rated like PG as well. I'm not necessarily sure. I don't necessarily think it's going to have the same sort of cultural shift. But I do think it is worth watching, even for the fact that, albeit perhaps hollow, albeit, OT's favorite talks of placards, it is important and it is crucial to support Viola Davis, an older Black woman in the industry that is talented, has done the yards, and absolutely is able to helm an action film. People talk a lot about why Wonder Woman should be watched. I don't necessarily care for it, but there are moments in cinema that should be supported, and the Woman King should be supported. But regardless of how I feel, and we're obviously going to get into detail, I just wanted to mention that. If I can be Mr. KT Mackey, I would say slavery is bad. We're obviously going to talk about nuances in regards to that. Is there anything else you want to say before we get into the actual themes?
No, let's dive in, man.
All right, I've named this, and this will mean no one to anything unless you're Tongan, but this is inspired by Little Nas X, Industry Baby. So this is talking about Hollywood. I had a little giggle gaggle, and I hope you joined me earlier. I just want to point out, representation isn't enough. Even if we're talking about in front and behind the screen, because in front of the screen, absolutely representation. We have Gina as the director, so you could say representation. But for me, it's not just representation. It needs to be, I talk about it a lot, Indigenous storytelling and story sovereignty. I need it with your full chest, right? So going back to where the nuance reside, Insecure, Issa Rae, Forever in My Heart Chambers, even Issa Rae creating a show about female rappers in Miami. Even Issa Rae, as a Black woman, knew that she didn't have the experiences and having the come up in Miami, that she actually made sure her writer's room and even the cast reflected that. So if you want the nuance, it's absolutely there. How then do we have an OG back in the 1800s story in Africa with complicit to the slave trade, and you've got two white female writers there speaking, and you want to know how white? OT, is that what I heard you ask? How white?
Yeah.
Dana adapted a Nicholas Sparks novel. Maria, Coyote Ugly. How white? That white, right?
Wow.
There's nothing wrong with, networking inside of the industry, but we're in the 2020s now. And I know a lot of people will helm this. And I guess you could also say the same thing about Black Panther, but you also had Ryan Coogler, Kendrick Lamar. And also, while we're here, friends and lovers, we've avoided all trailers of Wakanda Forever, but we have listened to Rihanna's song, and OT has all the feels.
Oh.
All the Fenty feels if you're nasty. So I think it's important to note that. And I also will say, even while I was watching the film, I was like, these storylines don't feel very specific to the setting. And I was like, I don't think we have the nuance. I don't think we have the context. And I felt fucking vindicated when I was reading and researching for this episode. It dilutes films like The Harder They Fall, OT. Why is it so jubilant and so exciting to talk about The Harder They Fall, and you have the same jubilance talking about this film? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, and you thought slavery was the nugget to fall over, didn't you?
Wow, I think you told me when you told me that it was white women that wrote this. Cool. I don't have qualms, man.
Maybe they're the ones that decided to do it in South Africa. Your qualm.
Yeah, but then again, I read that this was super under budget. They weren't giving them a lot of money to do. I think Viola Davis's production house had to take over to finish it off.
What does that have to do with hiring white writers?
I'm just saying, maybe an extra bit of budget and support from, could have been like, oh yeah, let's shoot some scenes in the Dahomey Kingdom for a bit, I don't know. I can't judge based on that. What I can say is, did I expect a documentary from this movie to teach me about the Dahomey people? No. Is it wise for you to expect to be taught history from this movie?
Just run it straight. No. Just run it straight at me, because you're obviously coming for me.
I'm just saying, whatever it is you took off from the end of the movie.
No, I'm pretty much have my qualms, quarrels, and quandaries at the start of the movie.
I can guarantee, I agree with some of the qualms that you've had. And we've said it before in the podcast, like, nothing better than people telling their own stories, So I'm not going to backtrack now. I still think that's important.
Yeah.
But did this affect this movie to the point where I thought it was a disaster? No. Could I have been better? Yes. Could I have done like little minor details to just put a bit of culture in it, of course, 100%. Could the actors have benefited from going to Western Africa to assimilate the culture a bit?
You mean be one with the people?
100%.
Okay.
You know, sometimes that shit helps. You know, you don't have to be fucking from West Africa to experience the people.
Uh-oh.
Go in. What's wrong with that?
You're setting a dangerous precedent. So
I'm just saying this.
Are we Michael Myers? Are we Candy Manning? Are we Spider Manning saying anyone can play a West African? Because that's kind of what you're saying.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
All this to defend these white ladies, hey? Jesus.
Because it's easy to sit here and be like, yeah. I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm trying to look above the line and above the fold, and coming out of it quite content with issues and with qualms a bit.
I love that. That is the motto of 2022, coming out content but with issues. That really says it all. That really, really says it all. The next theme that I'm going to go into is history is history is history. I will link on our socials another podcast. They are two young South African women. It's called the Rogue Unlearning podcast, and they did an episode covering Dahomey. And, you know, not for nothing, there is a History of Africa podcast, and it is a white man doing it. So, you know, if you've got 20 minutes, you can listen to that. But I would strongly recommend that you listen to Rogue Unlearning, because not only were they talking about the history, they were also talking about their experiences as well, which I thought was very interesting. So, you know, to bolster this conversation so it's not, as OT would say, meh, meh, meh. I did do research, but I don't necessarily feel like we need to get into the nitty gritty of research in this film. I think there are definitely some touch points we can talk about, because that's all that was covered in the film. I don't do sports, but I think that's what they call an alley-oop.
Oh, wow.
That's a love and basketball callback, OT.
Oh, come through. I have a son, Jesus Christ.
The only thing I would say, because we're obviously going to talk about the slave trade after this, the only thing I would say in regards to history is historically, you know, there was trading inside of Africa of humans, right? Mm-hmm. And the Dahomey tribe in particular gained a lot of their wealth through carting off slaves to the Europeans, right? That's not something that we're denying, you know? You know, sometimes when we watch historical documentaries, and unfucking fortunately, all around the world, Black, brown, and indigenous people were used to patrol and also kill their own, which is another story for another day. And I can, with my full chest, say that. However, to visually see it on screen is definitely a different experience, right? Mm-hmm. But I also feel like we need to exist in history and in fact. Otherwise, you live in worlds that are very conservative in the US that don't even like the word slavery. So they're trying to rename it to involuntary relocation, right? But you see what I'm saying? It's an ugly truth, but it needs to be acknowledged. Otherwise, you're living in a world where not everyone is comfortable, but those that are already comfortable continue to fluff the cushions behind them. So it's not that other people aren't struggling. It's just those that are already in power and those that don't want to get their feelings hurt. And then on the opposite side, the ones that know the real shit, right? So for me, it's unflinching, but it's important to acknowledge the history because it's not hugging Care Bears. That's not where we are. We're literally talking about slavery, and we're talking about a peoples that became wealthy out of that, right? And we also need to acknowledge, because you keep saying, what do I expect Hollywood to do? What do I expect? But they chose to make a film in this setting. They chose to ground this film in Dahomey. Now let's move on to the non-light, just as heavy theme, complicit to the slave trade. I have a couple of quotes from the film that I want to mention. But before I do that, what was your thoughts on how the Dahomey people being complicit to the slave trade, how did you feel that was portrayed on film? And don't give me a cop-out answer again.
I think with Dahomey, if I remember my history correctly, it was formed from people who are running away from different sort of kingdoms, and they all amalgamated and Dahomey was formed. So there were people who were running away from different conflicts, be it from the Oyo, from different tribes or whatever. So that's how it got formed.
Yep.
And with that, for them to grow to the point where they could survive fending off different kingdoms, they engaged in, slave trade. And a lot of the people across the slave trade belt, or whatever it used to be called, did that.
Yeah.
So one of the things where we need to understand is the nuanced balance that, these guys were coming through saying, give us slaves, we'll give you guns, we'll give you whatever, and all that shit.
Yep, to fight your enemy.
So, in as much as that happens, I'm not going to sit here and judge Dahomey for doing that, because it was forced onto them.
Because if they didn't do it, the Europeans will just go to their competitor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they will do something similar, or they'll pretty much just come on full on.
But I agree with you.
It wasn't up until the Berlin conference where everyone fucking divided Africa apart, and all those sort of agreements they had with the European countries sort of ended.
Don't
and
you
they just
love
came
that?
and, came in full force.
But don't you love that? Just drawing lines on a map and taking pieces for yourself? Fuck off.
Yeah. So a lot of people foresaw that. So I'm not going to sit here and judge. Shit was hard back then.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is what it is, man. But at least we got a king that wanted to end that and had the vision and the foresight to be like, us as Africans, us as Black people should not be doing shit like that.
I absolutely agree with you. Would you believe?
Wow.
Right? We have the same stance on slavery. Wow, what a world.
I knew we'd agree sometime.
Well, because even what we're talking about, it has a lot of complexity, because you can say slavery is bad, but it is different because, colonization was very effective, but also at the same time, it was a sustained long battle for many, and in some cases, hundreds of years, right? There was absolutely a resistance, but there was a sustained presence of violence from Europeans in colonization, specifically in Africa. So, to sit here and judge the slave trade isn't necessarily something that we in the 2020s should be doing. And I absolutely agree with you. We both agree with each other. And that's why, sir, we have mobilized qualms, quarrels, and quandaries with the direction of this film, because they absolutely didn't want to demonize white people. That was very clear. With the Portuguese, they didn't necessarily want to demonize them, which fine, cool, that's your Bobby Brown prerogative, even though we're doing a film that's set in the 1800s. So, the views of the Europeans at the time isn't what would be today. And they definitely didn't want to demonize the Dahomey. Not to say that they should, but it's also, even just from a basic storytelling point of view, who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist? Obviously, we have Naniska, who's the protagonist, but who's she fighting against? Because no one is evil in these camps on any opposition. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you. And I think the sort of method, or the sort of talk of, the Dahomey people were savages, they sacrificed their own people and shit like that, is sort of out of context as well, because a lot of fucking Africans were thrown overboard, killed in the name of what? Their god commerce.
Yeah.
So fuck that noise. And shit had to be done. And people's culture is a people culture. So I'm not gonna sit here and hate on the Dahomey for people thinking that they should have shown the Dahomey people being more brutal and shit like that. But you know what? That's all nonsense, man.
No, but I get that. But from a film point of view, who are we fighting? Because you're here to fight someone. But that's what I'm talking about. The direction of the film didn't make sense. I'm not saying you needed to demonize any of them, but then what's the point of being so muscly and strong if you're going to be fighting a phantom enemy? That's what I'm saying.
I don't know who was doing bench presses back then. Man, those people were fucking swole. Jesus.
Just a couple of the quotes that came out of the film, because that's what I'm saying. Like, we agree on all parts in real life history, but if this film wants to be told, what's the point is what I'm saying. If we're not here overthrowing the Portuguese/Europeans, if we're not here, there was a bit about the oil, but even then, I don't think they wanted to make like a clear stance. So who are we fighting is what I'm saying. So a couple of the quotes from the film, even if they're not Dahomey, they are still our people. But then, so I feel like that was more of a feel-good 2020 quote because they were slave trading other people. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not a problem because we understand the complexities of the 1800s, but then don't Disneyfy this shit. There was also another quote. It was either Naniska or Gezo saying, "See us only as a commodity." And it's like, bruh, why you sit on your iron thrones? Like, come on, fuck off with that shit. And then there was also, they're arrogant and slow like their guns. But it's like, bruh, you got guns too.
Yeah, I hear you.
You hear me, but you're letting me say it. All right. I take that as you agreeing with me. We've pretty much weaved it in because we are natural podcast weavers, if you're nasty. I want to talk about applying a modern lens. If anyone wants to agree that incest is okay in Game of Thrones, then they should be flagged by the authorities. But usually when we talk about themes in olden day times, applying a modern lens is problematic.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in this movie. You could tell the time period this movie was made in, just based on everything that they've sort of put in the movie. We get Gezo's wife being all blatantly shouting at Gezo, demeaning him in front of everyone. I'm like, bruh, what the fuck?
Not even a child, not even a child that doesn't have manners will be able to speak to him.
He's a fucking king, man.
Yeah.
People didn't even speak to the king directly back then.
In his face, yeah.
You talk to his right-hand man, and he would say to the king whatever the fuck he want to say. So for her to be like, hey, calling Gezo out every single time the chance she had, I was like, I don't know where this is coming from. Far out. And I don't know.
She was too ballsy.
Yeah, man. I was like, yeah, this is not fucking logical. This ain't gonna happen. We know it's one thing to portray it's the 1800s, man. People understand how shit was back then.
Yeah.
It's not that if you show it how it was, that we would be like, oh man, that's not nice. We're not gonna watch this movie.
Yeah.
No, it's just
you know what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Making it as if I don't know. It just was like this is not gonna fly.
I absolutely agree, and I felt a lot of that with Nawi's character. Her acting up. I don't know. I personally have a problem with like precocious, raucous children. Like they really bother me. It's like at some point you need to fall in line. She was always fighting. She was always rebelling. And again, it was like that Disney sort of formula. And it is disgusting that I think if said in the film, she was like 14, 15 years old. And then they brought this old man there and people were like laughing in the cinema. And it's like, but that was the reality for a lot of young girls. It's fucking wrong, but it's the 1800s.
Remember how Gezo, there was this trial. Nawi and the rest were going through. And Gezo's like, I should have taken you as my wife. I think that's how it should have. That's how it could have ended back then.
Yeah.
That's I was like, you'll be my wife. That's it.
But according to my Nicki Minaj do your own swollen balls research, the whole vow of celibacy was a thing. And they were considered the wives of the king anyway. So I'm sure if he wanted to slide up in them, he would have.
Yeah, probs.
And based on the reactions of the cinema crowd, they wanted Gezo to slide up in them.
Wow.
People could not control themselves, OT. Everyone's man moon was coming into effect.
True. Man, as soon as Boyega said only black women,
panties.
Yeah, panties, bro. 1800
appropriate panties. I just like, because for me, if that's what we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. So it's unfucking fortunate, but young girls being married off was absolutely of the time, you know? And I think she was talking to Ugozi where she was saying, you know, she was talking about her life story and she said it's enough to make you cry. And it's like, okay, but also at the same time, unfucking fortunately, this is the story for a lot of people, right? And, you know, Friends and Lovers, we did cover King Kong as recommended by Jordan Peele. And that was in the 1930s, right? My qualms weren't necessarily all of the disgusting, offensive portrayals in the film, in so much as you see the permeated sort of lasting effects in Hollywood, which maybe allowed the writers to sleep on in. But you see what I'm saying? Like, we know what time it is. We know what year it is. So let's just operate from there. But again, it was that softening of the blow. It was the Disney-fying of this story to make us comfortable. But that doesn't make any sense because, yeah, people were living very differently back then.
Yeah. What was up with King Ghezo's right-hand man? What the fuck was that? I didn't understand what was going on there. I was like, bruh's in the background. What's his title? What's his role there? If you're a right-hand man, he was like outside, man. I don't know. He could have played a bigger part. He felt very isolated to the point where it didn't make any sense to me. But it is what it is, man.
You mentioned something very interesting, saying that you're not expecting a documentary or a history lesson from this film. However, I will harken back to the Panthers. Go and check out our episode if you haven't already, Friends and Lovers. It's about the Polynesian Panther Party in the 70s in New Zealand. We mentioned how, you know, it's not the role to educate. However, for us to fully understand and contextualize and have some sort of resonance, we kind of need to be taken along with the journey. And I would say that this film failed to do that.
Okay.
I would also say that these storylines could have existed in a modern day setting because, as we pointed out, a lot of the sort of topics or sort of exploring of particular themes were done in a very hold your hand PC babies lens to make people feel comfortable, right? Not for nothing, but it was kind of a storyline from Dirty Dancing. And what I didn't like is, you know, Naniska is, you know, yes, she's multidimensional, but she's also this strong warrior. I didn't even say female. She's a strong fucking warrior, right? However, she was reduced to a jilted, broken woman in this film. All of her pain and all of her dimension was channeled through that. And if we're also talking about the 1800s, what did they think people did? Skip through the fields and pick daisies? What did they think happened during these slave raids? No, but let's be serious. Let's be serious. Or are we talking about on a bigger scale, we can only see barbarism in like a Vikings type thing?
Maybe so. It's the 1800s, you know?
No, but the circumstances that Naniska went through with Oba is obviously disgusting, right? However, we're talking about the 1800s during slave raids.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I just thought they needed an angle to sort of, why she would sort of leave against the king's wishes.
And how did you...
We needed that sort of push for her.
But how did you feel about the Bold and the Beautiful soap opera of Naui being the daughter? That was too convenient, don't you think? Are we that dumb? Are we that dumb of movie viewers that they have to do that for us to care?
It's better than a love story.
It's
so
lazy.
I am here for it.
But they did have a love story. And we haven't even talked about Malik yet, if you noticed.
Oh, man.
We haven't talked about it. But it was too convenient. If they had tried to dive a little bit deeper into the complexities of the Dahomey people at the time, we could have got some really interesting sort of storylines. We kind of saw bits of it with Amenza and the way she was being treated. And, you know, there was some commentary about we're all the same here. You think just because I was an orphan, you think you're better than me? Like, that was so interesting. That was so compelling. Let's talk about the complexities there. Nah. We just need to show poor Viola Davis not bubbling like in Fences. But you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, but I'm not going to put my cross and die on it.
Yeah, that's what the Christians did when they came to your lands.
Bloody hell, man.
But I don't like that they reduced her to a jilted, broken woman. You know, obviously there are themes to explore with her storyline. However, because this story has never been told and there is so much interesting sort of complexity in regards to the overall history, again, like that example of the commentary, we really could have got into a real place in this film. But again, we're dumb baby watchers. We literally need the baby to be linked.
I'm not gonna sit here and say I hated that. I found it intriguing. I liked the Nawi was the kid. It made the connection with Nazca that even more interesting and made her going after Nawi make sense. Otherwise, it does make sense her going against the king. You see what I'm saying? Like, why would you disobey?
But you're still plugged into the matrix that this works.
I don't want to
I'm saying this doesn't work.
I'm judging it based on what I'm watching and based on what they've given us, not based off what it would have been in 1800s or what I want the intricacies of this movie to cover. Because then it'll just be a rabbit hole. We'll be going down a rabbit hole that we would never get out of because there'll always be something that we can cling on to and say, hey, you could have done this instead.
God forbid there wasn't Kenyans predominantly having their hands in this film or being filmed in Kenya. Otherwise, you wouldn't concede to anything. Never yield, my friend, right? This film, if we're also talking about, because, you know, we're talking about slavery and stuff, but even from a storytelling point of view, it reminded me of House of Gucci. And this isn't a spoiler for House of Gucci, but like there was no point to the film in the sense that it wasn't talking about the rise of Gucci because Gucci already existed, right? It wasn't even talking about like a new era of Gucci. It was just the in-between taint of it all.
The stealing of Gucci, more like it.
I suppose. But you see what I'm saying? Like they talk about the legend of the woman king. It would have been cool to like, because the only time you saw flashbacks was when Naniska was having traumatic moments. Could we not see her rise to become the woman king? You see what I'm saying? Look at that. I'm not black, but I'm definitely not the white ladies writing this. I could have written something. I could have pieced together something, OT. But it would have been, because if we're really about it, this could have been like a 300, like Dahomey warrior style, a Gotcha style. You see what I'm saying? But no, it turned into her crying. It turned into Nawi crying because she wanted to burn Malik, which I think she did as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are just like arbitrary sort of stories that could have happened outside of this film. If this is a film that is very new and being introduced to the world, why do we have such arbitrary stories that could have fit anywhere else? That's what I'm saying. But anyway, let's move on to the love story with Nawi and Malik. The presence of Malik made me very uncomfortable, let me just say.
Why is that?
You know why. But can we also say, I don't know if it was clear and you don't need to answer this, but did he just grow up in Portugal or are we applying a modern lens again? Because when he hit the shores, he was so shocked to see black people enslaved.
No, I think it's one of those things. You don't know how bad it is until you get to the ground.
Okay.
You know, I could assume how bad it was during genocide or whatever, but once I go there, then it's fucking something different.
Okay, because he was walking around like he was in some slum tourism bit. He was like, oh no.
It's understandable because he sees that he's probably just seen black people being brought in cargos and be like, yeah, all right.
What, did he think they were doing it willingly?
It's something different. I'm not going to judge him for being shocked at the savagery and how they were treated.
I'm not judging him as an entity in the 1800s, but I am judging the decisions of the film to portray him that way.
I think it's only normal because he's not known anything other than that. And the fact that his mother is also Dahomey makes it that more it makes it that more personal to him. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why you're coming for him for being, you know, he's trying to reconnect with.
It's the decisions of the film that I don't jive with because I speak jive.
I know. All right. I think from history there was actually someone like Malik.
There were many like Malik.
Yeah.
A whole class of Malik.
I think his turmoil could have been done more because he wasn't really shown that much, or he didn't expose or express his disgust or anything like that. He was always in the background, even when they were chasing Izogi and Nawi through the Oyo compound. It was like, bruh, he just came up. No, don't do that. Don't shoot. I'll buy this one. Like, other than that, it was just, I wanted the rage factor. Where was that?
Yeah.
He came to connect with his people, to see where his mother grew up, and nothing. Like, he was just there to fucking look cute and to fuck now. Other than that, nothing.
I'm just ignoring the black anger you have is for the light skin one.
Bruh.
Where in your reverse Vitiligo are you, Oti? Uncle Oti Ruckus?
Oh, bloody hell, man.
And that's a reward for staying this far, friends and lovers. I'm just saying, you didn't have the same bass in your chest when we're talking about any other black character.
Nah, I'm not even mad at him like that. Nah, because they introduced a storyline for him, and they never followed through really, and it felt very Humpty Dumpty, I'm gonna walk over these eggshells or whatever. I'm like, if you're gonna commit with that.
That's interesting because I've said it for all characters, but you're only saying it for Malik.
Because to be honest, I think they did well with Nazca's character. I enjoyed Viola Davis's performance. I don't think I could have expected any more from her.
But she will always make a meal out of a role. I just feel like we could have gotten the whole combo side piece as well.
Okay.
Man, wow. Tell us you're cyberbullying Malik without telling us you cyberbullying Malik. Wow. And he did make me uncomfortable, but man, I will leave that to you. The floor, the dance hall does not belong to Malik. It belongs to OT.
Ridiculous.
Because I don't disagree with you. I'm just making my own observation. Oh wow.
Hey.
Who knew? Who knew it would be the light-skinned fella to get you going? Oh, I should have brought him up a lot earlier then, if that was the case. Okay. I want to finish off in this theme. It's not as heavy as the other ones, and I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. But I want to talk about the use of language in this film. The fact that it was predominantly in English. We haven't covered it on the podcast because, again, we are a place of nuance, but also at the same time, I would support Prey and Amber Mint Thunder. So go and watch Prey, friends and lovers. But we didn't get the full Comanche dub, right? And the qualms that I had with that are the same qualms that I have in The Woman King. We're talking about a fucking story in the fucking 1800s in Africa, and they're all speaking English, being like, oh, I can't understand you because you're speaking Portuguese and English. And it's like, bruh, like, that was really frustrating to me. And then they would pick and choose, or I guess whenever Google Translate would work, they would put in particular phrases as well. But to me, it kind of diluted it. And there was also like a God bless you in there as well. See, whether you decide to keep it in the edit, the Malik nonsense, Black Jesus and White Jesus will know.
Mm-hmm. I didn't hate that I was speaking English. I think sometimes it's just easier, for people to digest.
Okay, so don't talk like as a general platitude. You specifically.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see it in the native tongue. I would have loved that. I would have enjoyed that. It could have added a whole or more dimension into it. It would have been something nice to have.
How nice is it to be honest, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Wow, there was a lot to take away from this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And both Jesuses will be watching you, OT. We're going to finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference. OT.
I watched this when I was super, super young. It was called Cobra Vade. It had to do with this Cobra bloke being punished and is being sent to the kingdom of Dahomey to negotiate with the king. And when he gets there, it's just some ridiculous nonsense goes on. I think it was quite fun back then. I'll give it a go. It sort of shows how the Dahomey people operated and all that, and the power of the king.
If I may be so bold, were they played by African/Black people?
Yeah.
That was a trepidatious, yeah. So you're okay with white people playing Black people, just not light-skinned Black fellas?
Come on now.
Speaking about the color,
jokes, eh?
speaking about the colorism in the room, I want to reference a successfully executed story about Black figures in history in the 1800s, successfully executed, I say once again, The Harder They Fall.
Woo!
The colorism was pointing to Stagecoach Mary. If you
Wow. Yeah, hurt.
If you'd like to talk about the complexities of colorism, contact me. If you just want to fight OT on Malik on Twitter and Instagram, we're at For Your F-Pod.
Write us an email at hello@podcast.com.
We're also on Slavery is Bad, but Writing Badly is Even More Bad podcast if you'd like to leave a rating and review. And we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.